Byron Smith, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's great to be here.
Yeah. You've released a bunch of new songs this year, but before we do that, I wanted to go way back. Who were the artists that inspired you into making music in the first place?
Wow. I'd have to say the strongest memory I have is of my oldest brother bringing home a copy of Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd and listening to that on, he had one of those big Sansui stereo outfits, you know, stacked up with the big speakers, but listening to it on the headphones and just being transformed. That and listening to Dire Straits as well. My eldest brother was a guitar player, so I used to sneak into his room and put his guitar out of tune when I was playing it and not really knowing what I was doing, but just kind of bash away on it. And so he was kind of an inspiration as well in terms of, you know, having music in the house. And then just listening to those early records of like Pink Floyd, Dire Straits, and also my folks used to listen to the Seekers and some of the classics like that as well. So fairly conventional music, I suppose, but yeah, especially Pink Floyd was very transformational.
Yeah. So did you have guitar heroes like Gilmour and Knopfler? Were they real guitar heroes, or were you more into the songs?
Oh, yes, definitely Gilmour and Mark Knopfler were guitar heroes. And I used to sit and try and learn the solos, you know, with the tape recorder in those days, just going back and forth, trying to learn to play the songs. And then, of course, years later, I don't know if you know this story, but I was at the Corner Hotel playing in a band when Pink Floyd showed up, and Dave Gilmour actually asked to borrow my guitar and went up and played on stage. So that was a pretty amazing moment. And I was so starstruck. All I got was a photo. I never got him to sign the guitar or anything like that. I just didn't even think of it at the time. But pretty amazing. He showed up with Nick Mason, the drummer, their sax player, and a few of their black backing singers. And they just did like soul and blues covers. And it was amazing. Yeah, really good. Yeah. So that was kind of like a full circle for me to see that, you know, one of my heroes on stage that I just played on, which was amazing.
Yeah. For some reason, I was at another gig that night and missed the whole thing.
Yeah.
We should say we actually worked together back in the 80s at Juke magazine, weekly rock magazine, before the internet.
That's right.
You're a features editor. What were the highlights of your career there?
Oh, wow. There's so many. I mean, it was an amazing time for music in Australia and especially Melbourne. There was so much going on, and I was really spoilt for choice in terms of getting access to a lot of the fantastic live gigs that were happening around that time. But in terms of interviews and things, some of the funny moments that you will recall as well, like I guess this is more of a funny moment than a highlight, but going to the Bon Jovi press conference, and that was the only one they gave in Australia, and it was at the Hilton Hotel. And they're stationed at the front of the press gallery in a long table, and you know there's TV cameras there, photographers, journalists from around Australia are all there for the Bon Jovi press conference. And about midway through, John Bon Jovi drops his sunglasses and looks directly at me, and he says, "Hey man, ain't you in excess?" Because in those days I had long hair and looked a bit like Michael Hutchence. And I just remember like shrinking down into my chair and being so embarrassed as all the cameras turned on me. And then going back to the office to the editor, and he asked me, "Oh, did anything happen at the press conference?" And I said, "Oh, no, just they talked about their tour and their new album and all that." And he said, "Are you sure, Michael?" And somebody had obviously been on the phone and tipped him off that this had happened, and he thought it was the funniest thing. Yeah, so that was a highlight. But I think interviewing people like Peter Gabriel and Australian artists like Chris Bailey from the Saints, those types of experiences of getting to kind of, I suppose, get inside the minds of those people and what made their music tick and their personalities tick was really fascinating to me. I remember Peter Gabriel, it was just a phone interview. I didn't actually meet him, but I remember him talking about a place called Gabriel Land, which was like an amusement park for the senses where you were challenged to complete certain tasks that were based around your individual fears as a person, and that you would be asked to complete these tasks, and if you could get through, you would get a bravery token and so on. And I just thought it was so fascinating. And he talked a lot about his recording studio as well, which is in Bath there, and he built it, it was all custom built. Bath is in the countryside in the UK, with a river flowing underneath and a glass floor in the recording area. And how he used to always insist on having drummers and other musicians in for overdubs, to make sure that he captured the vibe and everything for the musician who was doing the overdubs, to make sure that they got that performance down on tape, which is something that it's always stayed with me. And I think about that when I'm doing my recording as well. It's how can I capture that energy and spirit that needs to come through in the song.
Yeah. How do you think music media has changed since those days?
Gee, it's dramatic, isn't it? When you think about, there was really, when Juke was around, there wasn't a lot of press. When I started at Juke anyway, which would have been early 80s, mid 80s, something like that. There was Juke and Ram, and at that stage there wasn't even that much street press. It was sort of the in presses and the drum medias of the world were kind of burgeoning at that stage, or very much in their infancy. So they were kind of like the go-to resources for people who were into music. They would buy Rolling Stone, they would buy Juke, and that was the main thing. The other thing was that radio was hugely powerful as a media outlet for musicians, and it still is. However, the advent of streaming has completely changed the way music is output, and for better or worse. I mean, the rewards for artists are becoming difficult to achieve financially, just from royalties. They're having to look for other ways to get income streams. But what it means is that people can really lock into a niche of music that they really love and discover music in that niche, which I think is really fantastic. It's similar to what's happening with cable television and so on, where you can really find interesting things in the area that you're passionate about, whether it be death metal at one end to melancholia at the other. That you'll be able to find something there. In the old days, the only way to do that would be to read the press and learn about new acts emerging, or spend a lot of time in record stores or listening to obscure radio stations, especially overseas acts. Now you can get access to the release of a new overseas act the moment it happens. So that's incredible. In terms of actual media outlets for the promotion of music beyond, playing music, there's, places like your website, The Australian Musician, are really important resources. They've gone from a physical format to an online format, and I think that's obviously the way it had to go, and so that's where a lot of people are consuming their information now. So that's changed dramatically. Rather than the paper page turning, it's more scrolling now. Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the day, you played in a band called 13 at Midnight, which some of the band members went on to form Things of Stone and Wood.
That's correct.
You dabbled in some other musical things. Did you actually stop making music completely?
I never stopped completely. I always had guitars around and was always working on songs in the background. But I wasn't playing live. I did the things that happen as you get older, is that I settled down and had children, and so I wasn't going out as much, and I wasn't playing live as much. So I wasn't playing live at all. But I kept my passion for music was always there. I listened to a lot of music, loved exploring and discovering new music, and kept writing. And so it's only been during this period of when the COVID pandemic started earlier this year that I'd been working in my own marketing business, and a lot of the clients disappeared because they were promoting to people who, it wasn't appropriate to promote to, such as aged care homes and so on. So they stopped marketing, and so I had time on my hands, and I thought, this is the opportunity. It's like, I've heard that the Chinese word for crisis is problem on one side and opportunity on the other. So problem, opportunity in a crisis. And I thought, I'm going to try and seize this opportunity and start getting some of my songs out, doing some writing, and getting into the recording studio and seeing what comes out the other end. And it's been a fantastic process that's ongoing now. And I've discovered that it's actually viable to do that on your own.
Yeah. You've always been a great writer. It's no surprise that your lyrics are clever and quirky.
Yes.
The opening line to the song Unhappy Accident is one of the great lyrics. I'm just someone on the spectrum with a plectrum.
Yes.
How much time do you spend on the lyrics as opposed to the music?
That particular song came out very quickly. And in fact, I recorded it here in this very seat. I've got a little studio set up, but you can't see it's off camera, but I've got monitors there and I've got a keyboard right in front of me. And I recorded it in one evening. It probably sounds like it because it's a bit rough. And I've had a bit of feedback that the mastering's not so great, but I'm not a recording guy. So the fact that it's even getting played on Spotify amazes me that I could do it here. Bunnings do-it-yourself style. So it came really quickly, and the lyrics came quite quickly too. It was a moment of self-reflection that just came to me, and it sort of all spewed out in a sudden. I'm actually not sure whether I'm on the spectrum or not, but I just love that rhyme. And I know that I'm a bit nuts because, most musicians are. So it seemed to work. Yeah.
So when you're writing, do you consider how much of yourself or someone else to reveal? Is there a line that you draw?
It's a really good question. With that song, for example, I mean, if you were really to read into it as a first-person story, it's very sad. It's a very sad song. So what I'd probably like to say is that that's the story of a close personal friend of mine. Trying to distance myself from that. But I think people can pick up on the honesty and integrity of lyrics, and when you're storytelling from a perspective of reality. And I think if you felt something and then you communicate that through words in a song or through poetry or writing, that will resonate with them. They will. People aren't silly. They can see when something's fake or real. And I think I try to write with authenticity and from the heart, and I've got things to say. And so, for example, Protest Song was written about the idea that this was before COVID, and it was when climate change was really at the forefront of people's thinking, and it still should be if you look at the latest press reports regarding the melting Arctic ice sheets and so on, that we really are in crisis. And it was about juxtaposing that in my Facebook feed against, girls taking pictures of their bottoms and stuff, pointing out on Snapchat and that kind of thing. So it was about this kind of apathy and distraction of modern social media at a time when things were collapsing all around us. As our homes burn into the sea, at least you'll have more likes than me. It's about the superficiality of some of the things that go on in the world at a time when really important things are being overlooked.
Yeah. Set Me Free is your latest single, I believe.
That's true.
I love the guitar sound in that, the solo, the lead guitar throughout. How did you achieve that effect?
I'd love to say that it was a big bank of pedals and so on, but it was in Logic. It was one of the settings within the Logic computer system that I was recording onto. They have built-in sounds, and I think it was called Stadium Spread or something like that. And so what I'll do is when I have my guitar plugged in, I'll just go through all the different settings in there, the presets, and then I'll play around with the various ways that you can adjust those presets. And it's interesting, that solo, because it's in two parts actually. The first part has that stadium spread sound, or it might be the other way around, and the other one has more of a kind of hollow tubey sound. And I liked the way they kind of spoke to each other and interacted in that solo. And I have to admit that it is a little bit inspired by Dave Gilmour. It has a bit of a Pink Floyd sort of feel about it. But, you know, I say that unashamedly. I admire his playing, and his melodic style has really influenced me a lot in my lead guitar playing. Yeah.
Sounds like a good time to talk about your guitars that you used on your recordings this year. What's the main guitar that you use?
Okay, so my pride and joy is an old 1992 G&L Telecaster, which is an ASAT model. It's that's it there. It's a 3-tone sunburst with a rock maple neck, a rosewood fingerboard, black tuners, and it has Leo's Fender's signature on it, which was only up until 1992 they were making it with the Leo Fender signature, because Fender decided to sue G&L for using the signature, and G&L said, okay, well, we'll take it off, but we're still going to make better guitars. So, and there's still a debate out there about whether G&L are better than Fenders. I think they're both equally good, and it really depends on how it's set up as well. I use a guy up the road from me. I live in Cheltenham, and he's in Cheltenham as well, called Chris O'Connell, to do all my guitar setups, and he's really good. And he described this quite understatedly as a very solid guitar, meaning it's good. Yeah, it's got a nice action and beautiful sound.
Yeah, you like the Fender style guitars as opposed to Les Pauls or anything else? What is it about the Fender style of guitar that you like?
I like the fact that it's sort of traditional. I like that feel of it being a classic, like even down to the timber finish. There's just something about that inspires me, and a lot of the kind of music that I like listening to, such as some of my favourite bands are Wilco and Cracker, and some of those Americana style bands, are very traditional in their musical guitar approach, and I sort of like that. I don't do any of the screaming kind of hair rock type solos, more melodic and blues based. So I prefer that kind of style of guitar. Yeah.
What's your main acoustic guitar, and is that the guitar that you write most of your songs on?
Yes. So it's an old Takamine. Once again, it's an older guitar, and I find that with older guitars, they tend to get better because the grain loosens up, the sound resonates more. They just become more beautiful over time, sound-wise. So this is an old Takamine. It probably should have had a scratch plate on it, because I've just about worn through here, Willie Nelson style. I don't know if you can see that, but that's picking over the years. And this is the guitar that you'll hear on all of my recordings. It has a built-in preamp. When I was doing Safe From Home, one of the songs that you'll hear on in my collection, we used both the preamp and a condenser mic setup, and that enabled us to kind of put those two sounds together and get a really rich guitar sound, which you'll hear in the intro of that song. It is a really, beautiful, lush, rich sounding guitar. Yeah. You've
been working with a guy named Carl Polke as producer or co-producer. Where did you meet Carl, and what's his role been?
My nickname for Carl is Kramer, because we used to share a back landing when I lived in an apartment in St Kilda back in the 90s. And he was the musical director of Circus Oz at the time. And so he was off touring a lot, but then he was also home doing recording and playing music too. And we used to share a back landing, and he used to just come in, grab stuff from the fridge and stuff. So he became my Kramer. And he is a bit eccentric. He's got the goatee and the long hair. But he's also a bit of a mad professor, and he's into all the technical side of music production. And so he has a very good understanding of, sound frequencies and using the available software and plugins and so on to get the best sound in what is a very humble studio that he has in Coburg called House of Noodle Studios. It's really just an old shop front that is very unassuming, and but it's really, I suppose, how you use it that makes all the difference.
You've been getting some great reviews and great coverage of your music through Spotify. Has the reach of the internet surprised you?
It has. You know what really fascinates me is sometimes, especially in the evenings, I'll have a quick look at Spotify for artists, and I'll because I like to keep updated on how many streams I've had, because it's just a nice feeling to know that people have been listening to your music. But then they have this thing that shows you who's listening now, and sometimes it'll be like 30 people listening now, and I'm just going, there's 30 people somewhere in the world listening to the music that I've created at this moment. You know, and it might be 11 o'clock at night here, but it's probably, you know, midday somewhere else. And so that is really, yeah, it amazes me, A, and B, I find it so gratifying and humbling that people are listening. You know, it's what everyone wants as an artist, I think, is to have your work appreciated and enjoyed, and for people to hear the message that you want to say as well. So it's been really good.
Yeah. So what's the plan? Will you continue to release individual songs rather than a collection together?
Yeah, it's interesting that you should say that. It was sort of, the reason that happened that way was I'm quite naive about the new way of doing music, and but it actually has worked out okay. I just sort of thought I would suck it and see, and just record a song and put it out and see what happened. And when I discovered that it actually was possible to do that as an independent artist and not have to involve record companies or publishing, you do have to use a few online tools, such as distribution for me is through a service called DistroKid. And what they do is you need to have one of those distribution services. It's kind of like a virtual record company, if you like. To be able to get your music onto Spotify or iTunes, you have to use one of those services. So I chose DistroKid, and they've been fantastic and very easy to work with. And you basically just upload your MP3 file of your song to their service, and then they distribute it to all the different streaming outlets from Apple Music to Spotify to Napster, which is still around, believe it or not, and lots of ones that I've never even heard of. But they go out there, and who knows how I'm going on those? I have no idea. But yeah, they're out there.
Yeah. So if things ever get back to normal, will you consider putting a band together and playing these songs live?
Very much so. I think that would be fantastic. So to answer your question, yeah, I've been from before. I have sort of released those songs one at a time, and each one has been a learning process for me in terms of how you promote it and those types of things, and also a musical learning process as well about what's working best for me in terms of instrumentation and feel and so on. I'm kind of growing up in public, if you like, for my short burst of music at this age. I do plan to do more songs, and I have some in production at the moment. I'm writing all the time. I've got a back catalogue of songs that I can draw on as well. And yes, once everything is opened up again, I'd love to be out there, you know, get a group of musicians together and do some live shows. It would be fantastic. But something that at the start of this year, I never even imagined that I would have a song recorded. So now to be talking about the possibility of not only having songs recorded and listened to, but being able to play again is really good. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So for people who are interested in hearing your stuff, where's the best place to go?
I think the best place to go would be my website, which is byronsmithmusic.com, because from there you can then click on the links to each of the songs in Spotify or Apple Music, and they're all there. And there's little descriptions of the songs as well, with a little bit of background information on what they're about or what inspired them, which is quite interesting as well. And there's some background information on me there, and you can also contact me through there as well. There's an email field that you can send me a note, and I'd love to hear from anyone who's wants to ask me any questions or make any comments. It'd be fantastic.
Right, Byron Smith, it's been great to catch up again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. You too. Good to see you.